I've lived in Oskaloosa my whole life, with the exception of a brief time where I was in northern Iowa. Born and raised here. My parents have lived here since the late 80s. My family's here. I currently work at Community First Credit Union down in Ottumwa as kind of a personal banker. And I went to William Penn University, graduated from Oskaloosa High School, so I guess you could say I'm a homegrown resident of Oskaloosa.
I don't think most people will doubt that you've had an interest in city government since you were the youngest of persons.
Yeah, I've been involved. I've been interested since like 8th grade, and when we had to do a middle school peer helpers project that required city council approval, and just kind of piqued my interest. And ever since then, I've attended city council meetings as much as I could.
And so let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Government, politics has kind of been an interest of yours. And so at an early age, you became, was it the youngest person to be elected to a school board in the state of Iowa?
I don't know that for certain. I can't confirm it, but I believe so. When I was on the school board, I know for certain I was the youngest in Oskaloosa history. I was not the youngest person to run. I know there was an 18-year-old who ran in the early 90s. I did discover that in some research, but I think at that time I was the youngest in the state of Iowa. Now, I do know now there is also an 18-year-old serving on the I-35, Interstate 35 school district school board. He got elected about the time I went off. So there's still some representation from young people statewide.
Okay. And so people will remember that you resigned from the school board. So let's discuss that resignation and what necessitated that.
It's a tough decision to make. But as a lot of people may remember, I became the news director of KBOE radio in town. It was a full-time news gig, and I discussed it. I looked at all the pros and cons, and ultimately I figured there was going to be a conflict of interest being in the full-time news media. It'd be difficult for me to cover school board and other local government and still have the station be non-biased, or at least have that continue to put up the front of we are non-biased. And so ultimately it was decided to go ahead and step down. It was a very tough decision to make because that was not something I took lightly. And there was times between that 30-day window where I seriously considered rescinding my resignation, but I think it was for the better for my position and my employer to remove that conflict of interest.
We'll start with the most basic of questions. Why would you want to run?
When we got towards middle of September, I was just kind of curious about the candidate filings. I looked at the candidates who was running. I have the utmost respect for all the candidates on the ballot. I know all three of them, as well as the mayoral candidates and the unopposed city council candidates. But I looked at the candidates who were running. I thought, I think we need a different perspective and some young blood. And so I'm running because I think we need a different perspective on the council. I think we need some younger leaders to step up. Ultimately, I'm going to be living with the decisions that are made over the next 50, 60 years because this is my hometown, and I want to start a family here and continue to raise my family here. And so I feel I should be involved with the decisions that are being made, as should any of the other young people in this community.
You feel as though that the young perspective needs some more representation. That's kind of what I'm getting from your commentary.
Right. I've always felt the young perspective needs to be considered.
So what's different between the young perspective and, say, the current incumbents who are, have experience and have already been a part of the community for some years?
Well, I certainly don't doubt and discount the experience that they have. I think it's cultural differences. I think I've got a more realistic perception of where things are likely going to be going in the next 30, 40 years, just because that's the generation that's being raised into the future. I'm not knocking on the incumbents or those who are currently in office. I just think that the young perspective needs to be considered because that is where we're progressing. And my fear is that perspective is not going to be listened to, and we're going to find ourselves in some troubles as we move on.
Okay, and let's talk about some of those challenges that the city is facing. Mainly, we'll start with infrastructure, and everybody hires a council member. They vote for a council member because they believe that they're going to address those things that impact them the most, which are potholes, water rates, sewer rates, those kinds of things. Talk to us a little bit about what Charlie Comfort is going to do to fix potholes and to maintain or control rates in the sewer system, because I know that there are some mandates that are also put on the city.
Well, to start off, I think first of all it's important to note we do have a very aging infrastructure right now, and I think there has been some good steps taken. It is not just streets. We obviously have the aging sewer infrastructure issue. I think right now we need to stick to we need to have a continuing 10-year road plan. I don't think we should limit ourselves to just road plan either. I think we need to look at our overall infrastructure and have a 10-year infrastructure improvement plan. We've done great with the roads for the most part. I think we can shy away from seal coat roads and start looking at permanent replacements, such as with 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue East. 4th Avenue East was done when I was in kindergarten in 1998, and it still looks brand new here in almost 20 years ago. When you talk about sewer rates and water rates, it's important to note that the water board, which is appointed by the city council, the water department is technically separate from the city of Oskaloosa from the standpoint of they operate on their own principles and are considered a separate governing body. I think we need to continue, though, to work very closely with them. If I'm going to appoint members to the water board, I want those same members to be mindful of the fact when they're looking at increases in water rates. I think when you put unelected board members in charge of something like that, they need to be held accountable for rate increases and such like that. I think we need to be very careful about as we start looking at improvement projects to our infrastructure. We need to look at monies available. I would hate to be in a situation where we need to do some major improvement projects. I'd hate to be in a situation picking up rates. I'm reminded of the 25% sewer rate that hit taxpayers here in Oskaloosa. I think that was overkill. I think it may have been necessary, but I think it should have been phased in. I think it was a very unnecessary outcome on our taxpayers' pockets, and I think also it affected our businesses in town. You look at our major water and sewer users, that was a very significant increase for them. And if we're going to build a business-friendly environment, it doesn't start by hiking up sewer rates by 25%. So I think we need to continue to have a 10-year infrastructure plan, not just a 10-year road plan, and let's be mindful of our monies available.
The DNR has several mandates that are now facilitating or making it so that cities like Oskaloosa, which we're not alone, and having to spend large sums of money in order to reduce infiltration of storm waters into the sewer system. I think we actually are having to build another sewer treatment plant because of requirements from the DNR. How do you, if you were elected as city council, how would you work with state government and state agencies such as the DNR and say, hold on a minute, these kinds of rules and regulations have we really thought this through, and what are the financial impacts for taxpayers in Iowa?
Well, I think first of all, you don't do it by sitting on the city council and issuing a tersely worded statement to the state officials. You go up to one, you look them in the eye and say, you're making these decisions and it's affecting my taxpayers because they can't pay their bills then. We have to be more aggressive in how we do this. If state agencies such as the DNR are going to have new regulations and requirements coming down, we have to work very closely with them. I'm not privy to some of the information other council members may be aware of. My answer may not be sufficient, but I think where you start is you look them in the eye and you say, "You're passing this on to me. It's going to affect my taxpayers. It's going to affect my citizens of Oskaloosa. I don't think that's right." We have to work better with people. I think right now, if you look at local, state, national politics, we don't play well. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, or if you have a conservative viewpoint or a liberal viewpoint, I think when you look at different requirements like this, you have to just set those aside and be prepared to travel up to Des Moines and look them in the eye and say, "Why are you doing this? Is this necessary? It's going to affect my people."
Do you think that the city should continue on the path of supporting the regional airport?
If anybody knows me, I think without a doubt they probably know I support the regional airport project, and that hasn't faded at all. I strongly believe we need to continue forward with the regional airport project, which is now entering a very important phase now as we start looking at land acquisition. This community has been through a lot in regards to the regional airport, and it's not just dating back to 2013, it's dating back to 2005, 2003, 2001, when the Red Rock Regional Airport project, this project's predecessor, was first discussed. And we have to let bygones be bygones. If you look statewide, Oskaloosa is starting to be very well known because of how divided the community and the county is on this project, and we have to move past that. The land acquisition process is where we're at right now. I think I definitely will continue to support the regional airport project. I think it's necessary for our business and industry in this area. If we're going to build, we got to have the appropriate infrastructure. The Northwest Connector project is working on getting that into the 5-year road plan. The regional airport project helps that as well. Businesses aren't going to grow if they don't have the right infrastructure. That being said, as we start moving forward with the regional airport project, we need to be very mindful of the landowners. We need to be more than fair as we begin land acquisition. When you start looking at land acquisition, when I say we need to be more than fair, I'm not going to throw out figures because I'm not the South Central Region. I think we handicap the South Central Regional Airport Agency if we elect officials by saying we need to throw out these figures and these figures for land acquisition. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that, yes, these are how the farmers do make their money, and we need to be mindful of the fact that if we do get them a good offer, we need to be thinking about the future for them as well as they start trying to recoup from the land that they will be eventually sold for the regional airport project. So what it comes down to is just being fair to landowners as well. And I think that's one way we can hopefully bridge the divide that has occurred over the past 15, 20 years.
Another one of those projects that has had some division is the Early Childhood Development Center. In the city of Oskaloosa, it was pretty well approved, and the city is moving forward with it along with the school district. Talk to us about why you think that particular center is important and why the city should be involved in that long term.
First of all, I want to again also reiterate my most support for the Early Childhood Center. I was not in Oskaloosa when the local option sales tax campaign and vote occurred. I did donate to One Mahaska. I'll be open about that. Not a lot of money, but it's what I could afford. I think the Early Childhood and Recreation Center is important because I think right now we struggle in Oskaloosa and Mahaska County with child care offerings. I think we need to really be expanding on what we have. Child care is very important to families in the area who, you see now we don't have a lot more stay-at-home families, stay-at-home full-time caretakers. A lot more families are full-time in the workforce, and so we need to be providing opportunities for child care. And I think we need to continue to expand on our recreational offerings as well. The center is going to have some great recreational opportunities out there at the Lacey to continue to build on what we have out there. That being said, I am a little concerned with mixing private enterprise and public government. I would, in a perfect world, it would be run by by taxpayer dollars, and so the current financing proposal I am a little leery of when it comes to mixing the YMCA private enterprise in with public government. But I will, if I am elected, I will have an open mind on this. I will speak with stakeholders, and not just those involved with the Lacey Complex. I want to speak to local business owners and local residents about this as we start moving forward on it. But I do, just to clarify, I do continue to support this project because I think it's important we continue to have child care and recreation opportunities for our community.
Okay.
My concern is with recreation in general in Oskaloosa. I think we tend to forget we do have Edmondson Park, we do have Vanderbilt Park, we do have other parks in this town. We'd like to talk about how great the Lacey Complex is, and it is great. It is, in my opinion, one of the best recreation complexes in southeast Iowa. But I think moving forward, this city has got to start throwing more money at our parks recreation outside of Lacey. Edmondson Park is owned by the city of Oskaloosa, yet if you stop out there, it's fallen into disrepair. The wooden playground, when I grew up, when I was little playing on that thing, today it's upsetting when you walk out there and see how much of disrepair it's fallen into. There's not been any major project to clean up the park there in a while, and I, at one point earlier this year, was looking at spearheading an effort to privately fix that thing up. And regardless of if I'm elected, we will get it fixed up, whether it's me advocating for it at budget time or me privately organizing something. But we will get that done. But if you look at Oskaloosa history, years ago we had a publicly elected park board. It's a 5-member board, all 5 members elected at large by the people, and they essentially ran the parks department in Oskaloosa. If it wasn't for the Parks Board, the Edmondson pool probably would not have got renovated. Two members of the Park Board undertook a public effort to get bonds issued for that, and it passed with 67% voter approval in '03. So I think we need to seriously look at bringing back the Park Board. Whether or not it's publicly elected, we need it back. We need a body overlooking the Parks Department. The City Council can't be the only people who looks it over. We need another group to be involved in overlooking that and advocating for changes out there.
Well, and quality of life is a term that's thrown around quite a bit, and so some of these things that you've been talking about, quality of life fits into that, and also with that quality of life is often connected to economic development. So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts about the quality of life and how to spur business within Oskaloosa.
Well, if you look at Oskaloosa's growth over the past few years, we hear a lot of people, including not just the two incumbents running this year, but all the incumbents on the current city government, talking about the growth and development Oskaloosa is experiencing right now. I don't doubt we've had some growth, but I am disappointed in the growth we've had. If you look at our population estimate to where we are now in 2016, population estimate to where the population was during the 2010 census, we really haven't grown substantially. We have not seen significant business growth in Oskaloosa. We've seen shopping actually decrease in town, especially with the loss of JCPenney's here this year. We have not seen many small businesses set up shop here in town. We've seen very few small businesses, in my opinion, really set up shop and be able to stay and function in Oskaloosa. I think we need new people looking at current economic development. In my opinion, I think we have a huge problem with regulation in this town. And I think regulation is killing economic development. We are absolutely over-regulating ourselves. We are using nonsense codes to enforce on people who want to come into this town. If you talk to many developers, they will not do business in Oskaloosa. They have no problem saying, I'll go to Pella, Grinnell, or even Des Moines before I come to Oskaloosa. And we should be extremely alarmed at that. This community cannot grow if we're going to continue to use nonsense codes. I'm on the Board of Adjustment in Oskaloosa. Very recently we had a meeting to discuss a variance for the current owner of Wiggs, who's looking at renovating that into a new small business in Oskaloosa. Current city code was going to mandate the gentleman to put in 44 parking spots in the current Wiggs property. We granted that variance. It was a no-brainer. But that's not just the only thing. I mean, if you look over the past few years, there's many businesses that have been stopped in their tracks because of the current regulations we have. You look at the new sidewalk to nowhere ordinance as well. That's adding on additional costs for business owners and also residential owners as they look at building new additions to their homes or building new businesses in town. And it's not just small business growth that I'm worried about. I think it's large business growth as well. With all the economic development projects we have going on in town, there's really no reason why we can't draw in something like Facebook or Google or Microsoft. But we're not going to if we have codes like we have now. We have to. I'm not the anti-regulation candidate. I'm the let's be sensible about regulation candidate. And if we're not going to be sensible about regulation, we will not grow. We cannot rely on what we have now to build us into the future. We have to be looking towards the future, and we have to change things now.
And you mentioned that you, throughout the name, big league companies like Facebook or Google, and trying to attract them. How and why would they even choose Oskaloosa? I mean, it sounds good. You're handing, you know, potentially what some people would say is pie in the sky. But how would you be proactive in attracting such a large corporation to Oskaloosa?
You know, it may be pie in the sky. HQ2 to Oskaloosa. HQ2 is not going to come to Oskaloosa. It's probably not going to come to Iowa. But I think we have to shoot for projects like this, because if you shoot for projects like this and have the infrastructure and the business-friendly environment ready, you will at least land something. May not be as big as Facebook, but you will land something big into Oskaloosa. You can't just shoot for something small to come to town. You have to have big dreams and big goals and actively shoot for them. We're not going to attract new business to Oskaloosa by just sending out a flyer and say, hey, Oskaloosa, come here. We have to aggressively court them. We need to continue to expand on our relationships in Des Moines and with other companies. I think we need city leaders in town who are going to aggressively point out Oskaloosa to other industries and say, hey, look what we've got going on here. yeah, you can get this in Des Moines, but you can also get the small town feel and a business-friendly culture and very supportive community. And that's what we've got to work towards.
Okay, and you talked about, reaching out, but right now there seems to be a great disconnect between the urban and city cultures in our county right now. If you were elected, what things would you do to help mend those fences and help not just Oskaloosa, but all of Mahaska County then grow?
Oskaloosa is a part of Mahaska County. I think people forget that. We are not what the state of Virginia has independent cities. We are not an independent city. We are part of Mahaska County, and we have to work better. It's no secret that the counties do not get along well with the rural residents. And I think where it's most evident was in last year's low option sales tax vote, where you had the rural residents for Pet Eroge and the One Mahaska campaign. I think that's where this really started to come out, and it started probably with the regional airport project too. Number one, I think we have to work well with the current county supervisors. Regardless of whatever philosophical differences we have, it's time to stop having, for lack of a better term, pissing matches with our current county officials. We may not be able to get along very well, but we have to start at least trying to bridge that gap. That being said, I think we seriously need to consider looking at a charter commission for Mahaska County government and maybe even Oskaloosa government. There's nothing wrong with change. At sometimes you need to change your government. The United States, we started off with the Articles of Confederation, and now we have the present Constitution because we saw the current thing wasn't working. And so we adopted it. So we revamped it. We changed what we have now. The Iowa State Constitution allows for different ways to change your county government. Lynn County has actually done this a couple of different times and has another proposal that actually was just approved by voters last year. A charter commission is basically, it can be done by petition of the public, and it would basically be a commission of the people appointed by different elected officials, county supervisors, county department heads such as sheriff, auditor, recorder, treasurer, our current state legislature officials, so Guy Vanderlyn and Ken Rosenboom. They would all have a say in who gets appointed to them. They each get to appoint 3 people. And that charter commission would then have a year to address the current county government, and they could make proposed changes. Any proposed changes have to be approved by the voters of Mahaska County, not just the voters of Oskaloosa, but the voters of Mahaska County. And those changes can be anything from keep it as is to let's have 5 members on the county supervisors. Let's dock their pay to a per diem, and let's have a full-time county administrator. It can be anything as drastic as that. And I think we have to start looking at different solutions because I don't think we're getting along well. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that, and we need to start looking at maybe some more radical ways to get along better, and maybe have more. I think people feel they don't feel represented by the county supervisors, and maybe this would also provide a better feel of better representation.
You have a campaign video that's out there somewhere, and you talked about those regulations that you say are hindering job growth, business, even personal home growth here. How would you address that if elected?
I would be hesitant. Right now, the city of Oskaloosa has several overall, I'd say, one-size-fits-all code books that we approve. You almost have to have significant code books just because of the amount of things we have to consider. But that being said, I don't necessarily believe we should adopt one-size-fits-all programs like the International Building Code, the International Fire Code, and other codes like that without going through with a fine-tooth comb what's in it. I'm reminded of the International Building Code when the City Council adopted that. I believe it was 2009 or 2010. We adopted it, and we were made aware of when that vote occurred. That, hey, there's a requirement in here that any new building construction in town has to, including homes, has to have fire sprinklers in there. And we went ahead and approved it as is. It wasn't until a few months later when residents were starting to cry foul saying, hey, this is a significant additional cost to me and I can't build anything with this additional cost, that we decided to remove that. I think it's bad government when we approve something and then decide and then figure out what's in it. We're not Congress right now. We are the City Council of Oskaloosa.
What have I missed that you would like to have touched on a little bit?
Oh, I just want to reiterate, I am not the anti-regulation candidate. Don't vote for me because I'm anti-regulation. Vote for me because I'm going to be a sensible voice. and regulation. I believe strongly we haven't done enough with our economic development. I'm appreciative of the efforts that we have made, but I think we need to have new voices and a new vision and different perspective on what's going on in town. The rental inspection code, I think it is important to address that because I think there are some concerned individuals on that. I would not have voted for the code as is. I think it's important that our local renters have a safe and clean place to live in, but I think the current code was done too heavy-handed. I think with all the codes we have in our current code book, I think it's a little ridiculous to say that we didn't have anything in current code to address rentals in town. And I think there's also some disheartening comments made towards renters when it was insinuated that the only slum houses in town are rentals from our landlords. I think that was a slap in the face to those who provide housing services to local people in this community. So I think that's just another example of things we have to be sensible on. I just think we've got to be more. I think the big takeaway for residents as they start looking at who to consider voting in these next 2 weeks, I'm going to be sensible on what we approve. We like to compare ourselves to Pella. I think a better comparison is Grinnell. But other communities, if you look at those other communities, they're not aggressively attacking those who want to develop in town, saying you have to do this, 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 and this. They're welcoming. They're a welcoming community for developers, and they have a business-friendly environment. And I think that's what we have to work towards now, because I don't think we quite have that yet. We're getting there, and we have some good infrastructure, some good economic development projects going on, like the airport, the Northwest Bypass, and the wind farm. But it's also small things like codes and regulations and taxes that are really going to be the deciding clincher for businesses as they start looking at Oskaloosa.
Any last thoughts, Mr. Comfort?
I'd appreciate everyone's vote on November 7th. I think as you look at all the candidates, I think it's important to remember that I don't believe there's any one issue that only the current city council can address, or that only the current city council can tackle the issues coming up in the next few years. I believe I am the voice that Oskaloosa needs as they start looking at a different perspective and a new vision for the community, and I will provide that. I am not here to give lip service. I stand by my words and I mean what I say. My actions will speak louder than my words when I'm on the city council, and I would encourage the voters to take a chance on me. If the voters are absolutely thrilled with what's going on in Oskaloosa, I understand I'm probably not going to get their vote, and I respect that. But if voters are looking for a change, looking for something different, maybe a different perspective, a new vision, then I'd like to speak with them, and I'd like to get their support on November 7th, because I think we're at a prime opportunity to really build on the foundation that's been laid and really position Oskaloosa for a very, very, very bright future. And so I would appreciate everyone's vote on November 7th. Feel free to give me a call. Cell phone number is 641-660-5358. I'll answer as fast as I can, and my email address is charlie.comfort@gmail.com. And you can find me on Facebook. I respond as quickly as I can. I am not afraid to answer the tough questions, and I'll be here for you. I also want to add that if I am elected to City Council, I will hold town hall meetings once every quarter in one different ward in Oskaloosa each year, because I think we need to bring the government to the people. And I will do everything I can to make sure everyone's being heard and not just rely on a council meeting public comment section. So I appreciate everyone's vote, and I hope to see you all at the polls.
And I'm going to close this out because I want to make sure that those that are viewing and reading this know that Charlie was a page stringer for Oskaloosa. We have made sure that we have kept our distance in this
Yes.
election, and so just for point of clarification for those that might have wondered.
Right.
So.
I have not written for Oski News since earlier this year, and any advertising on Oski News I've paid for with my campaign funds.